And we are live. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Unfiltered Report. My name is Ryan. Day number 5 of the World Cup in the books. We are going to recap that right after this in a separate recording. So please stay tuned for that. We'll also have College World Series recap as well, amongst many other things to look forward to. The Brendan Sorsby situation can the gift that keeps on giving. Finally, getting to a point where we can get the deep dive in that as well very shortly here. Knock on wood. So uh, before we get into all that, though, uh, Malik came on here and talked about diaspora, and I'm not sure if it's one of those things where maybe when someone mentions something, you notice it a lot more, or if it just happens to be, he started a movement or a trend or something. Because in the hours after we talked about diaspora, I heard and read the word diaspora more times in the last X amount of hours from then until now than I have in my entire existence on this planet. We'll get to the day 5 recap. John Strong mentioned it when talking about Cape Verde. Again, we'll talk about them. There's been a lot of reporting about the Persian diaspora out here in Southern California and outside of Iran, and that's where I wanted to focus this particular episode on. Not necessarily the diaspora part of it. I mean, it is part of it, but just in many ways, I guess you could say it's been the elephant in the room, if you will. It's something that we've touched on a little bit, but it's something that you can never really fully encompass the full scope of in one recording. As we always like to say on here, just because you talk about something one time doesn't mean that's the only time you can talk about it. In fact, the more times you talk about it, you can add depth to it. You can continue to add more layers to it. And in different cases, sometimes perspectives can change. The way though, that's the beauty of having conversations, is that you can continue to evolve those conversations, and hopefully with this particular recording, I can open it up to others out there who can probably say far more impactful and knowledgeable and factual things than I can, and take it to a level that I can't take it to. But what I'd like to do is at least somewhat set up that discussion, and hopefully, through this, again, others out there, um, not just in the Persian community, mind you, but throughout the world, and people who might have similar viewpoints or differing viewpoints. I just hope that this will allow the opportunity for this conversation to continue. Um, but it's something near and dear to my heart in many ways, and it's something that you never know when or if you're going to touch on certain things, and you always try to do your best to do it justice. And what I wanted to really do with this particular thing is just kind of highlight. There's been a lot of discourse out there. There's been a lot said, a lot verbalized, written, reported from many different outlets, and just from people. Whether just people that are uh, not journalists or anything like that, but just everyday people as well that are in tune with the situation, and there are a lot of constantly evolving facts and figures and viewpoints and things to consider here. And one of the things I really want to dive into is just heading into day 5 at a World Cup, and long before then, there was definitely a lot of publications out there, a lot of opinion out there about the complexity of the World Cup as it pertains not only to the Iran national team itself, but to the support of the team. Uh, you can go back to, it's not that this is the first time that there have been these questions. I mean, even as recently as 2022 in Qatar was a whole similar but different. You know, it's something that's been around in the discourse for a long time. Obviously, it's not a new situation, but in this particular World Cup in 2026, it's never quite been to this level of complexity, just in the way of how people within, again, the aforementioned diaspora of the community and different people and how they view the national team. You've had, so leading into in the days and weeks and months leading into the World Cup, uh, all kind of accumulating into day five of the World Cup with Iran's first match against New Zealand at SoFi Stadium. When it initially was announced that Iran was going to be in a World Cup group with Belgium, Egypt, and New Zealand. I was very excited for that. You go back to 2018 and 2022 specifically, they were dealt incredibly tough groups in both of those occasions. They fought valiantly despite the circumstances at that time, which also should not be forgotten. And they performed admirably under the circumstances. I remember 2018. They played Spain about as well as you could have possibly played them, and then they played Portugal, and and in the brink of stoppage time, they were maybe a half an inch away from moving on to the round of 16. But that's just sometimes how the ball bounces, as they say. In 2022, there was a lot of political tension heading into that match as well. Within the country, and they played England in the first match, and England honestly beat the doors off of them, and you wondered how they were going to respond from that. They got the 3 points against Wales on match day two, which set up a match against the United States to see which one of those two sides was going to make it. It was another incredibly hard fought, close match with the United States moving on. So and even going back to 2014, when they started off against Nigeria, and then in match day two against Argentina, they played them about as well as they could have possibly played it. They played 10 behind the ball, and just a moment of individual brilliance from none other than Messi himself, and that was really that was the difference in the match. I remember that goal like it was yesterday. I remember, it's just all of these different matches. It takes you back to different points in your life, and uh, you know, in case anyone who hasn't listened to any of these recordings in the past, and maybe you don't know me at all, I grew up a Laker fan. I'm a Dodger fan. Who that go Saints? Vamos los Oilers. LSU Tigers, Cal State Fullerton Titans. But then of course, there's the Iran national team, and I think over the years, again, looking at your life throughout different lenses, if you go back to 2014, you go to 2018. I think even from the 22 and 26 World Cup that we're in now, I think the viewpoints are different throughout all of those different time periods, not as it pertains to the national team, but as it pertains to those other teams I mentioned, the Lakers, the Dodgers, so on and so forth, where, I think as I've gotten older, my love for sports is at this moment has never been greater as we sit here. I mentioned in previous recordings, my days are all blended together. Maybe we touched on it a little bit, but at one point, definitely there was a little bit of a love hate relationship with sports at one point in the last 6 years or so. But here we are, and at this point in time, I've never loved it more. But I think where I've evolved, I'd say, as someone who loves sports, is that as a younger kid, as a child, maybe even in college, I think, I would have been incredibly invested in, like, those particular teams that I mentioned that aren't the national team, and that would take my priority and precedence. Where I think now, for me, I love sports more than anything. Like I mentioned, I grew up a Laker fan, but I love basketball. Basketball is what I love. Um, so to me, if the Lakers win or not, maybe some people might say, people can come to their own conclusions. But for me, I don't really care if the Lakers win or not, to be honest with you. And maybe especially as much as I used to as a child, growing up watching, the Lakers back in the day. Um, and watching the Lakers not only when they were winning championships, but some of my favorite times watching the Lakers were in the twilight years, after Kobe tore his Achilles, and they had the D'Angelo Russell, Swaggy P teams, or even before that, they had Robert Sacre back in the day, Lou Williams, all these different guys that were on the Lakers over the many different years and different iterations of the team, and I remember exactly where I was when they won the NBA draft lottery. Or when they got the was it the, yeah, when they got the second pick in the lottery, I should say, not when they won it, when they got the second pick in the draft, in the year that Ben Simmons went first overall, and they took Brandon Ingram. But as I've gotten older, I don't really care as much. There are different reasons for that, but I love basketball more now than I ever have. With the Dodgers, obviously, that they've won back-to-back World Series. I'm incredibly ecstatic about that, of course. But at the same time, if they weren't to win it this year and three-peat it, honestly, wouldn't really be that devastated. And some people might say, well, that's because they won twice in back-to-back years. But I would have said the same thing in either of those renditions as well. Obviously, I'll always root for the Dodgers, but I'm a fan of the sport of baseball, whether it's college baseball, Major League Baseball, minor league baseball, so on and so forth. Um, I'm a fan of the sport. I love watching any game, and that's really what we want to highlight on here is give love to all these different teams across the sporting landscape, because that's really where my passion lies. I would say really, out of all those teams I listed, I think LSU and Cal State Fullerton Titans. I'd say that's probably where it would be the difference, and I'll always be invested in that. I think maybe because there's a bit more of a personal connection there both ways, as opposed to these professional teams that I think they don't really care if I watch or not. They're going to make their billions of dollars regardless. Obviously, LSU is going to make a lot of money too, but there's more investment for me there. Of course, I love college sports as well. I love watching all the in case it wasn't abundantly clear, and will be even furthermore in the future. But I say all of this because there was a lot written and said about how Persians, not only in Iran, but outside of Iran, should view this World Cup team. There are so many different factions of opinions. I think most people that you talk to would agree that they don't support the government in Iran. Uh, I am no different. I would just get that off, just get that out there, so no one thinks otherwise, and regardless of your opinion. Um, I look, I think what was written and said was, there were so many different viewpoints of, you have some people that said, hey, you know what, the team is an extension of the government, and because of that, I'm gonna, not support the team. I'm gonna boo the team. You had some people that would say, I don't support the government, but I'm proud of the culture, where we come from, and not going to give the government, the regime in Iran, that sort of power to take that joy away from something that, uh, you know, we love. So you had all these different viewpoints, and I, for one, really had no idea how the match was going to play out, not only on the pitch but off of it. There were points a couple months ago where you didn't even know if they were going to be at the tournament, if they were going to be at the tournament, what that was going to look like. Obviously, it goes without saying that they made it to the tournament, but even in playing in the tournament, they've had to deal with, the players themselves and the team have had to deal with a lot of obstacles. It goes without saying, whether it's visa restrictions, a lot of members of the support staff, the president of the federation were denied visa entry. They had to move their base from Arizona to Tijuana. There was a lot of talk about how they would have to come in the same day, leave the same day. Um, it ended up being where they came a day earlier, but they had to leave the same night after the match, which we'll get into some of the quotes from the manager and the players in just a second here. But part of what I wanted to really do here is just, we talk a lot on here about fact versus opinion, and so what I like to do is just report what is factually out there as far as what people are saying, not necessarily even what is fact, but just what people are saying, whether it's the players again or on the governmental side of things from the whether it's the visa issues and whatnot. I mean, it's even been I think one of the players who didn't play last night, but Mehdi Torabi, I think I read earlier before this recording that um, I guess his visa already expired after one match, and there's doubts that he's going to be able to travel for the other two matches. Um, it's an ever evolving situation as far as the on the pitch and the off the pitch stuff. But just as far as how the community, especially, I mean, it goes without saying. Southern California is home to the largest Persian community outside of Iran. I am one of those people. I was born in the United States. I've lived here my whole life. I've never been to Iran. I don't even know what it looks like. Um, so they say home is where the heart is. And, the United States is home, but Iran is a home I've never known. Um, and, it's a place I would love to be able to visit one day and be able to experience that. But the more the days go by, from year after year, the less, not even more, I mean, yes, the less likely that it might even be, but also, you don't put your hopes into it in the way that you might at a younger age. I think for the majority of my life, I've always been under the impression that if and when things change, would be able to finally make that happen. But as you get older and things don't change, it's like they always say, you can never miss something you've never experienced. But if home is where the heart is, you do yearn for a place you've never been able to visit and be a part of that culture and experience. The not the government, but the people. Um, and so, I've always hoped and prayed for better days for my family's native country. I'm proud to be in the United States, of course, but I'm also proud to be a Persian dude. People always ask me, "Oh, where you from?" I'm Persian. Obviously, again, born in the United States, born and raised, but I'm a proud Persian dude. Um, and it's something that though, with all these things leading into the tournament being written and said, I throughout the previous tournaments, whether it was 2014, 2018, even 2022, uh, there was no doubt in my mind that regardless of again of the government's still the same. It's been the same from 2014, 18, 22, since 1979. And I hope for better days for the people, more than I could possibly express into words, because the people deserve so much more. But as far as just the World Cup itself, I've always been invested in the Iran national team. I've loved the national team. Even I mentioned with the other day, in 2010 they didn't make the World Cup, but in the World Cup game, I would put Iran into the World Cup and I would play as Iran. I'd create a whole team of players. Uh, and try to go win the World Cup with Iran. I'll do that in 2014 and 2018 and 22. And I've always always rooted for the national team, no matter what. It's always been that way. Uh, but heading into this tournament, especially as it got closer, it was probably the first time in my own life that I wasn't really sure what to feel, what to expect. And I think that's probably part of the reason why we didn't really talk about it much until after the first match. But what I can say is that in the days leading up to the tournament, as it got closer, with I think once the World Cup especially started, um, I came to my own personal conclusion that I was going to support the national team like I've always done. Again, not because I support the government over there, but because I support the people of Iran, not only in Iran, but outside of it, here in Southern California and other parts of the world, in Europe and Canada, Mexico, uh, throughout the world, other parts of the Middle East, Africa, wherever the Persian community is across the globe. I am proud to be. I'm proud to be Persian in that aspect, and I'll never waver from that. Um, there's a lot about the culture that I'd still continue to love to educate myself on and learn further, and that's why I was alluding to the fact that I hope that in due time can get other people who can shed light on the beautiful parts of the culture far better than I can. But always been proud. It's where my parents come from. It's where my grandparents come from. It's where my aunts and my uncles. I have family over there that I have met that have come and visited. I have family that I've never met. We've got family all over the place, in the United States and other countries, and I've always just been proud. One of the ways, my mom and dad always told me growing up that you should be proud of who you are and where you come from, and I'm thankful to them for instilling that in me. And obviously, they would always tell me, look, you're an American, you were born in America. But they would also tell me, hey, this is your culture, this is where your family's from. These are the values that were instilled, and I'm forever thankful and indebted to them for that. Um, and I think it goes without saying that regardless of where you are, I think we all take great pride in who we are and where we come from, and our cultures. And sometimes I know that relationship can be complex and it's not always black and white. There's always a lot of gray area, and it's such a situational case by case basis for so many different people across the globe. So I don't want to be insensitive of that, but I can only speak on my own behalf, and I've always been proud in that aspect. Again, like I mentioned, I wasn't sure in the weeks, maybe even as early as 2 3 weeks ago, what to expect or how I was really going to feel. But as the tournament got closer and once it started, and as the first match started to get closer and closer, I think it's when it all started to kind of form a little bit more in my own brain. I think it took a little bit of time to really even realize that it was coming that quickly. And once it did, like I mentioned, I came to the conclusion that I was gonna root for the team harder than I've ever rooted for them before. Not because I support the government, but because I believe in the people, and I think it would go against everything that we've talked about on here. Otherwise, that I think a dangerous precedent is lumping people from any country and associating them with the worst of what you associate that country to be, regardless of the country. I think it's an incredibly dangerous precedent. We've mentioned other countries that have had their own visa travel issues in this World Cup, and that deserves to be spotlighted. There was the Somalian referee, Omar Artan. There was the one of the Iraqi players that they questioned for 10, 11 hours, and the photographer they didn't let in. And there have been so many different instances of people who wanted to travel and watch the World Cup and were denied that ability for one reason or another. And I still think that that's an incredibly dangerous precedent. And it goes against the entire purpose of what the World Cup is supposed to be about. The World Cup is supposed to be something that unifies us and not divides us, regardless of where we are, where we live, whether we're a part of that diaspora or not. Um, and I think it's something that I would love to continue to talk about further in depth throughout not just this but future recordings because I think it's important. I think even again within the community out here, I can't speak for anybody other than myself. So I don't want to lump myself, and I hope nobody takes my thoughts as as the end all be all. I would encourage people to do their own research, on Iran. I think there's a lot of, it's I think because of the situation over there and the government. I think if you've never met someone from Iran before, maybe they live in the United States, but that's their cultural background. If you've never met someone from there, I'm sure it would be easy to come to conclusions if you've never met someone from a particular place, not just Iran, anywhere, Somalia. If you've never met a Somalian person before, if you've never met a Haitian person before, wherever it may be, I'm sure it's easy to come to conclusions and assume the worst, especially if the places in which you consume your content, your news, and your media tell you that these are the worst of the worst. But in reality, these are the nicest, kindest people on the planet that want the same things as anybody from any country on earth. We all people, we're all human. And at the end of the day, I always like to say that we're all, uniquely different. And that's what makes us human is that we're all different. We have different opinions, different political beliefs, different religious ideals or non-religious, different sexual orientation, sexual preferences, uh, different economic statuses, different upbringings, different environments, different genetics, but we're all human at the end of the day. And we all, majority of the people on this planet, I guess not 100%, but a large majority of the people on this planet, we all want the same things. We all want to feel. We want to feel the highs and the lows of life with the people that we love. We want to experience love. We want someone to put their arm around us and say, "Hey, I love you, man." And I think we all want that, whether we admit it or not, or whether we think about it or not. We're all cut from a similar cloth. If that's we want the best not only for ourselves but for the people of the world and the people around us. Again, our loved ones and people we've never met. So for me, I can only speak on my own behalf, but I just hope that people out there, uh, regardless of your beliefs, well, I think it's important to find grace as much as possible and give people the opportunity to tell you who they are instead of making assumptions about who they are. Talk to them, get to know them a little bit, understand their perspectives and who they are, where they come from, whether they're proud to come from where they are or not. Some people aren't. That's fine too if you feel that way. Um, but personally, I couldn't be prouder. That match was a perfect example of sport because there was a lot written. What's going to happen? There was a lot of unknown. But once the ball kicked off, uh, you could feel the energy from the crowd, and you could feel the fact that you know what whatever circumstantial stuff is going on, at least for that 2 hours that the match was going on, we all came together as best we could. At least again, within the stadium. I know there were protests outside the stadium, but uh, within the stadium, you could feel the energy and the support. And like I said, I haven't. I'll be honest, I haven't been that invested in the match or a game in any sport and a rooting interest like that in such a long time. I forgot what it felt like to feel that. Um, and so again, do I support the government? No, I don't. Do I wish for better days for the country, my family's native homeland? Of course I do. But I love to be able to travel there one day. Absolutely. But I'm also proud to be here in the United States, and I'm proud to be a part of a community of people that live in the United States that are also a part of this diaspora, which has never been a trendier word than it is. In many ways, is now one of the major themes of our World Cup coverage is diaspora. So shout out to Malik for that. Um, but again, Iran is such a diverse country. Uh, Again, if you've never met someone from Iran and you see that it's the Islamic Republic of Iran, and you would never know that there are Christians, Jews, Zoroastrians, non-religious people. My family, one of the, I'm not religious, was not raised religious. Uh, just thankful that my parents, they just, they always told me that all religions teach similar values. Be a good person, don't lie, don't cheat, don't steal, treat others the way you wish to be treated. And that's another thing I'm thankful for in that upbringing. And one of the things that my mom told me in the lead up to the World Cup was one of the pillars of her upbringing, and that's good thoughts, good words, good deeds. It starts with your thoughts. Your thoughts come out in your words, but then you have to back up those words with actions. And I can listen. I've never been a perfect person. I've had bad thoughts, bad words, and bad deeds, and I'll continue to do the best I can on a daily basis to uphold that. Um, but that is the foundation of the culture of how I was raised, not only but of the people. Um, and these are her words, not mine. But may all the good in life search for you, find you, and stay with you always. Uh, so I'm forever thankful to her, to my dad. I think it's only, it's ironic in many ways that the second match that Iran's going to play on Sunday falls on Father's Day. It's also going to be out here at SoFi Stadium. I hope it's going to be another rocking atmosphere out there, and that the people come together as best they can. And for 2 hours, the people inside of that stadium showcase the best of our people. Because at the end of the day, no matter what is written or said in other places, no one can really take that away from you unless you take it away from yourself. So I hope that within whether again within the community out here, I hope we all stand together and we come together, and despite our whatever differences of opinion we may have within the community, which again there are plenty, um, we can showcase to the world that we're a great people. And we're maybe not we're definitely not what's portrayed out there in certain outlets, and that we're a loving, kind people that want the best for all people, not just within our own community. And I would say the same thing within the United States. Something that I think, like, we've talked about it before. The beauty of the United States is that it is a country of diversity. It's not only a diversity of people from different countries, diversity of thought, of religion, of political ideologies, sexual orientations, all these different societal tropes that sometimes people put us into boxes, and they say, "Oh, uh, you're a Persian dude, you're an American woman, whatever it may be." But at the end of the day, I would encourage people out there not to look at people in these societal tropes and rather talk to people as human beings and get to know them, because you can learn so much just from listening to other people out there, and hearing those different perspectives. And even if you don't always agree, that's fine, because what happens is if you hear something from somebody that you don't agree with, initially, either they'll explain it to you and it'll make some sense and you'll hear it in a way you never heard it explained before, or it'll further enhance and support your own beliefs. And that's how you really come to have beliefs. The values that each individual has, yes, in many ways they are instilled, but also you yourself have to believe them. Um, and I think sometimes it's good to get them confirmed, uh, and that comes from having these conversations. So I would hope that regardless of what happens on the pitch, however far the team makes it, whether they make it out of the group stages or not, I hope the remainder of this tournament highlights and showcases the best of all of us and not the worst. And I hope that it's an opportunity for all of us to come together again, all countries, the 48 countries in the World Cup, all the other countries in the world that aren't in the World Cup. I hope that this tournament allows us to celebrate not only our differences, but our similarities, and the fact that we're all human and we're all rowing the same boat because we all share this planet together. And most people out there want peace. They want love. They want to feel peace and they want to feel love. They don't want conflict. They don't want war. They don't want famine. They don't want to be oppressed. Most people just want to be free, regardless of where they live, the color of their skin, or any other societal trope you can think of. So, my hope in this recording is that people out there will continue to enjoy not the World Cup, and they'll continue to bang the drum on the things that go way beyond the sport itself, and that we as people, regardless of where we come from, can showcase the best of all of us. So enjoy the rest of the tournament. We'll be here on a daily basis doing our part to cover everything on the pitch. Um, we'll continue to talk about the things off the pitch as well, different sports. We'll continue to do it all. Um, but I just hope, again, I hope people out there uh, take a little bit of time out there and don't just listen to me. I hope far many other people out there can say far more than I can. And cheers to the best to come for all of us, regardless of where we come from. So remember, good thoughts, good words, good actions, and most of all, beyond anything else, may all the good in life search for you, find you, and stay with you always. My name is Ryan. This has been the Unfiltered Report. We'll recap all the matches. I mentioned some of the quotes from the players and the manager and whatnot. We'll put that in the next recording as it pertains, and we'll recap that match along with the other three matches of the day, which, in my opinion, was the best day of the tournament. Cheers. Stay safe out there. Peace and love.